All right, so in the next video, I'm going to cover presenting the contract. This is a very intricate part of the sales process because you always want to make sure you know what you're talking about when it comes to signing a contract with a seller. So this is a very hesitant part when it comes to the sales process. This is the seller signing over their contract for the cash amount and cash offer that you have negotiated. So in our Google Drive, it's under our purchase agreement. This is our sales contract that we use for land and homes. It's broken down to a 2-page purchase agreement. That's pretty short and sweet. There is another standard purchase agreement. It's called the TREC, Texas Real Estate Commission Purchase Contract. This is a contract that is 9 pages, and it's used by realtors and other wholesalers and investors. We have changed our contract to make things a lot easier and pretty much work contracts with sellers to save and avoid a lot of questioning and concerns. So in this 2-page agreement, I'm just going to read it out and go over what the fields mean, and then also see the video on the sign request tutorial, so you can understand what each field represents. So this agreement is made this blank day of this, 2020 by and between blank. So what this is that we're looking for the date the date that the agreement was made and by whom as the seller on the first line. So what we're going to put is, let's just say today, which is February the 5th, we're going to put this is made on the 5th day of February 2020 by and between seller's name, say Jane Smith. Hereafter, call sellers and Cashout For Homes LLC, which is the buyer, and or assigns. We always have and or signs because this gives us the right to purchase the property or choose to assign it to an end buyer. This gives us the right to do those one of 2 things. Hereafter, call buyer, which is again us, Cashout For Homes. Buyer and seller hereafter jointly be referred to as parties. So there's the seller on the first line and the buying party, which is us, Cashout For Homes, on the buying party side. Description of the premises, seller agrees to sell property located at, and on line 2 is going to be where we put the address of the subject property. We always have to add the property number, the property name, city, state, zip code. So it has to say 123 Main Street, Dallas, Texas, 75052. You have to have the address in full. Description of property is written as follows. We have as is condition. And then the description of the property includes fixtures, windows, floor coverings, built-in appliances, draperies, hardware, blinds, shades, windows, door screens, awnings, door plants, trees, permanently attached items to the premises. So pretty much what we're saying is all the permanently attached things to this property are included in the sale. Someone can't sell the house and say, hey, I want this tree, or hey, I want to take the garage door off. I mean, these are just, it's kind of unforeseen things that people might try to throw in there, but we want to clearly let them know that when you're selling this house, you're selling everything that we see before you, unless you decide to add it to the exclusions in the 2nd page. All right, so the next section is purchase price. The seller agrees to convey property to buyer in a sum of, the first line is the price that you've agreed on, with the earnest money amount of, which is the earnest money that I have approved for you to input. Rule of thumb, typically we're doing $100 to $150. If it's a deal of bigger caliber, we may do $1,000 to $2,000. Total cash price is going to be the same as the first line. So the seller agrees to convey the property for a sum of, say we put $100,000. The third line should have $100,000 as well. Earnest money is included in the total purchase price. Terms are the following. The following terms are applicable in this contract. Closing costs, attorney fees, title fees, and other title costs are paid in full by whom? So we always put buyer and seller. Buyer and seller. Unless we have added the benefit to win the deal for buyer pays closing costs, then we would put paid in full by buyer. So standard is buyer and seller, because at the closing table, we want the seller and buyer to pay their own closing costs. Number 2, any taxes, not including transfer taxes, liens, encumbrances, mortgage owned, will be closed, paid in full by whom? So taxes, if we've agreed to pay their taxes, we want to put paid in full by buyer. Otherwise, standard is seller pays their own taxes. Number 3, the seller and buyer will set closing to be as soon as possible for all parties, no later than blank days after ratification without written agreement to this agreement. And what they're saying is, how soon are we closing? So we want to put, the goal is 30 to 45 days, 45 to 60 days on bigger deals. We want to make sure we get the agreement at least 45 days to make sure we don't have to do any extensions. Pretty simple. So days of ratification is how many days after the signature of the seller. The ratification date is the seller's date that they sign. The title report and survey, if required, are ordered promptly if title is not available. If title doesn't have an available settlement date, or if issues of title that do not allow it to be insurable or clear, such as probate, tax liens, payoff statements, or any other clear title delay, the settlement may be delayed up to 60 days to obtain clear report and survey. During this time, the contract may be terminated by the buyer, and all earnest money will be refunded to buyer. What this simply says is, if anything comes up on the title, such as a lien, a judgment, or even something that will take longer than the days of ratification to close it, then we are asking, we are requesting and in contract putting extra 60 days to close the deal. So we're asking and requesting the seller to sign off on giving us 60 additional days to clear the title report and survey if any issues come up with the title. Number 5, seller understands that the buyer is a privately investment company that is buying real estate to make a profit and may be purchasing the property for immediate resale for the and profit, even as soon as the closing day. Both parties agree that the subject property is being bought/sold as is. So what they're saying is, we clear as day, even in our original pitch, even in our initial pitch, we're letting them know that we may or may not buy it. We may also reach out to capital partners, investors, and will take advantage of this deal. But this gives us clear grounds with clear understanding that the seller understands how we are doing business. Number 6, this property is being sold as is, where it is, with all defects and condition being at the sole risk of the buyer. Sellers shall not be responsible for any repairs of any kind whatsoever, including repair or damage caused by the resolution of wood destroying organisms. Further, seller does not warrant that any work done by the property by seller or anyone previously owning the property has to be done with code or permits. So the seller is saying to the seller that you do not have to fix a thing as we've agreed to. So any damage is done to the property, anything that is not warranted or with code, we will not ask them to fix those defects to get this property sold, such as a retail deal or if a realtor is requesting the sale. At settlement, the buyer and seller will pay their respective transfer taxes. So, pretty much in the year of 20, whatever that year is, there's proration of taxes. The seller is only responsible from January 1 to the date of sale. The remaining of the year is paid by the buyer. and that's due, I believe it's due upfront at closing. They pay their taxes for that year, whatever the proration is of the date of sale. Earnest money will be held in escrow by a buyer's closing attorney, which is our closing title company. We use Allegiance Title. Here on this line, you're going to put Allegiance Title - Leslie Yagay - the address of Allegiance Title. Please use the business card of Allegiance Title. There's one on every desk. And then if you need it, feel free to ask as well. That's going to be the closing title company, which is our closing attorney. Number 9, earnest money, non-refundable to buyer unless the title is non-conveyable, or seller is not available to close within the time period of this contract, or buyer is not satisfied with the result of the inspection, which flows into the inspection. Inspection does not pass buyer standard. Buyer may terminate this agreement, written notice to sellers within how many? We say 20 business days of ratification of this agreement, which is signature of this agreement, in which earnest money will not be submitted to the seller. So we will input earnest money, but within 20 business days, which is pretty much 30 business days, if we do not get a buyer, or if we decide not to purchase this property or move forward for whatever reason, we're able to cancel and get that earnest money back. Number 11, seller will provide permission to access the property for conducting buyer's inspection, collecting bids, designers, other potential buyers, realtors, a reasonable notice from the buyer and seller. If property is vacant, seller shall provide a key to access the property, and key shall be provided at days of ratification. So when we sign, we want to make sure we're collecting the key to put a lockbox on the door, so it's simple for the seller, buyer, and our potential partners that want to buy it to enter the property with a code at the door with the lockbox. If there is a tenant, we want to make sure that we're giving notices on dates that we need to enter the property to fulfill the inspection period. Lastly, any fixtures, attachments, debris located around the property that not removed on closing day is ownership of the buyer. Hey, I got a free TV and a free car, believe it or not. So on the day of closing, whatever's left behind is free game. If the seller has things within that property, within the sale of the property while we're trying to close it, they say they don't want anything inside, it's also free game for you to have. Other terms is going to be a section where you're able to add additional verbiage, such as exclusion. Say a seller has a piano inside, they want to keep it. You want to make sure right there that the seller's piano is not a part of the sale, and other terms like so. This is where the seller signs, prints their name, and adds their email. If there are 2 sellers, there's spaces for each seller. And this concludes the video for performing and going over a contract.